Okay, we'll have a conversation.
Okay.
So, we were just all so amazed with the lunch that we had today and just couldn't get enough of it. So we wanted to have a conversation with you and talk with you. But this is Chef Scott Drewno. He is the co-owner of the Fried Rice Collective. His other partner is Danny Lee. We've known each other for quite some time. The Fried Rice Collective is a DC-based restaurant group. They've got Anju, Trico, I Egg You, your catering company,
District
catering, and then you have one brand new restaurant.
We just opened a new sports bar called Upstate FTW, which is a sports bar with the regional foods of upstate New York, where I'm from.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on your James Beard nomination for Restaurant. What does that mean? Like, how did you get there, and what does that mean for you and your restaurant group?
Yeah, I mean, amazing honor. I think I've been fortunate enough to win a bunch of chef awards, lose a bunch of chef awards over my career. They're always a little silly to me because, it's just my name, or in this case, me and Danny, but there's, we currently have 156 team members that really make it all happen. Up a pretty face out here. The team is in the back, really doing all the work. So that's point one. It's really a recognition for the entire team and an honor. And secondly, I guess when we were nominated, it's one of 5 restaurants in the country, so it's something. But Danny called me and he's like, "Congrats!" And I was like, "For what?" And it was like 10:30 in the morning, and I haven't really paid attention to James Beard. Well, I mean, a little bit, but not like I used to when I was younger. It was something I really wanted to win, and was nominated a few times, and then I decided that I want to be rich, not famous. So I just focused on building a company. But when Danny called me one day, like 10:30 in the morning, and he's like, "Congrats!" And I was like, "For what?" He's like, "James Beard and Angel, who's our chef at Anju, who him and I worked together for Wolfgang for a long time, and we will work together for a long time. He's been nominated a couple times recently. He was Food and Wine Best Chef a few years ago. So I was just assuming Danny was, saying, "Hey, Angel, got nominated again." But he's like, "No, you're Restaurateur of the Year." And at that time, I was in our original Chico restaurant in the bathroom trying to fix the toilet. The glamorous life of an outstanding restaurateur. So kind of like, it feels great. It was definitely a great experience to be nominated with some really amazing restaurateurs that have been doing it for a long time and doing it really well for a long time.
Well, we're so honored that you're able to help support this symposium.
My privilege.
So honored. And we're also honored to have many of our sponsors provide in-kind seafood products, and thank you for your team working with us on that. The menu for lunch, and also this afternoon we have a reception from 4 to 5. It's amazing, but can you tell us a little bit about what your inspiration was in designing the dishes for us today?
Sure. So most of my career, I worked for Wolfgang Puck. Started with him when I was 21. Spent 17 years with him in the fine dining space, and was able to travel the world with him. And I opened restaurants in Singapore, London, Minneapolis, Dallas, LA, Vegas. I was kind of all over the place, and helped run a lot of his restaurants and his catering companies. And one of the first lessons you learn with Wolfgang is to buy great ingredients and don't screw them up. That's basically like if you start with an inferior product, you end up with an inferior finished dish. And so certainly the partners today made it easy on us. We got into some really beautiful, great seafood, and then we tried not to screw them up. basically. So, that's the inspiration, but each dish we kind of look at, and our catering company, District Catering, is really a bespoke catering company, and we'll cater every cuisine. Last week someone's like, can you make my grandmother's coffee cake? And I'm like, sure, so we make that, and we'll really kind of any genre, any cuisine, so some of them, like when I open the salmon, I don't know if it's subliminal because it says jumbo lump on the can, which is smart advertising, whoever did that. But I felt like it was like, oh, crab cakes. So instead of doing, a crab cake with crab, I did it with salmon. That was sort of, the inspiration on that is like, oh, it kind of looks like crab. And then it's like late season tomatoes, and I like basil with tomatoes. So we made sort of a salmon cake with basil aioli and tomatoes. So each dish each seafood we just kind of looked at and we're like, what do we like with this?
You're like a seafood whisperer, like tell me what you want to be.
Yeah, basically, yes. And then a lot of it's a collaboration. For me, it's like the tilapia. Like I like blackened tilapia, just something I've always kind of gone for with tilapia. So it really just depended on the seafood, and then we talk about it with the chefs that we work with every day.
I think we've known each other probably at least 7 years.
Longer than that. Charity Off the Hook was longer than that.
Charity Off the Hook.
Yeah.
And then we had a Celebrate Seafood event during October National Seafood Month. With really famous chefs around the district compete with each other on seafood dishes. Tell us about your love of seafood. What species do you like? It's a long question. Like, how do you buy it? How do you buy sustainable seafood?
Yeah, I mean, we work closely with our seafood purveyors, and they kind of help guide us into, what's MSC certified, what's sustainable. And in the restaurant space, I don't think we're always perfect on that, and buying what we should, and creating dishes and selling what we should. We kind of keep learning and keep getting better about that. So as to kind of save the seafood and, be sustainable and think about future generations and wanting to have the joy of seafood, down the line, is always sort of something in our head, and what we choose and why we choose it. I mean, the first thing is really quality, whatever the best quality seafood we can get, that's what we want in the restaurant space. But then the economics comes into play as well, especially at a time like now where, consumers are more cost conscious, I think, than we've ever seen in our space, and I guess outside of it as well. So that goes into as well, depending on what restaurant I'm at, whether it's Anju, which we can charge a little more, or it's Chico, which is more in the fast casual space. Like what seafood can we serve there based on the price point we want to stay in, and then what's the best seafood we can serve at that price point.
Do you have any particular species that you're really into showcasing at this point?
I mean, personally, I love to travel and I love to eat seafood wherever I go. So, the last trip we were in Korea and we went to Busan, which is on the water. So, if you picture Korean barbecue, it's typically done with beef and pork, but in Busan, it's all seafood. Which was a really cool experience for me to have live grilled eel right in front of me, and just beautiful fish right there in front of me grilled. That that was something that as someone that's devoted their life to food and eaten a lot and eaten well around the world, that was a recent experience that was really something different that I hadn't been accustomed to, that I really loved. It really just depends where I am. I was in Amsterdam for my birthday last year, and we went to a seafood restaurant. We were at the Turbo, which I love Turbo. But it was like it felt like I was in a Paris restaurant where the servers just hate you, and they just like throw the food on the table and like walk away. And so my wife and I were at the Turbo, and they literally just come and just drop it on the table and then walk away. This whole Turbo. So if you don't know how to fillet a whole dish like that, which I saw a table that was, I think my wife and I were like on a first date, and the guy was like, I'll cut, I would have, but the guy seemed like a jerk. He was like, I'll cut this. And he started like cutting it in half, like through the bone. And I'm like, we had Turbo on the menu for a while, and I used to teach the servers how to fillet at table side. So thankfully I have that, club in my bag. I knew how to do it. So I just filleted it, but it was really funny about, you know, it depends on where I am, honestly. Like, to me, when I was in that restaurant, I'm like, oh man, turbo's a thing, and really just depends. You know, I love a shellfish tower. You know, if we're celebrating, you know, go crush a shellfish tower and hold that bit. Yeah,
Nice.
I love seafood though, and it's interesting about seafood because I grew up in this little town in upstate New York, a village of 4,000 people. So to say that I didn't eat seafood until I moved away, I didn't eat seafood until I moved away. Except once in a while we'd go out on a Friday night with the family and get a fish fry. But that was really my only recognition. And a lot of people where I'm from are like, I don't like seafood. And now that I've, you know, been fortunate enough to live around not only the country but travel the world, you know, it's really unfortunate that a lot of people have that mindset because they've never really had seafood. They don't understand what it is. The only seafood they've had is probably, you know, inferior, you know, and you know, the methods for freezing have changed now. And you know, back in the day, I'd be like, I can't buy any frozen seafood, it's gotta be fresh. Now with, you know, flash freezing and the way we're preserving seafood and holding it to be more stable and taste better, you know, I think there's an opportunity to really get it to the consumer that says they don't like seafood just because they've never really had it or they're not really experienced with it.
That's so true, and that's a good segue to our theme for this symposium. It's powered by seafood, and you know that 90% of Americans don't eat seafood per the dietary guidelines at least twice a week. That's where it comes from. And you know, most consumers, as we looked at this surveys from Sarah and Jackie, they do like seafood, but there's a lack of confidence in knowing how to buy it, you know, cook it. What are they actually order at restaurants? You know, they love it, so they know someone else is going to prepare it for them. But what are 1 to 2 tips that you would have for a home cook if they just want to add one more meal of seafood a week? What is there a go-to recipe that you recommend for them or a cooking method?
Well, you know, I have enjoyed like recently in the consumer side and retail that there's more, not only seafood, but products that already have marinades, already seasoned a little bit. Like we were talking to Starkist and they're like, you didn't choose the Cajun tuna or whatever. I'm like, chefs are prima donnas. Like we wanted like to be like just a beautiful product and I want to manipulate the flavor. But for the home consumer, that's a really good idea to have it already where this is already flavorful, it already tastes good. You know, basically like right out of the package, you know, this tastes really good. So I think that's a good, easy step for the home consumer that's not familiar, with it. But I really think you know, the world is shrinking and, you know, chefs are a little different now. You know, when I was coming up, dating myself a little bit, but there was no Food Network, there was no Google, there was no, yeah, no, you know, exactly. You know, so if I wanted to learn how to make something, I had to ask another chef. I had to buy a cookbook. You know, like I have this book, The Food Lover's Companion, and I still have it. It's mangled. I'd be like, oh, I want to learn how to make such a dish that I heard about, you know, and I'd have to really dive deep into like my friends' cookbooks. Now it's like you just Google it. You know, anything you want to make. So I think there's definitely an opportunity as long as we can get really great seafood into the consumer's hands. There's an opportunity to attach a recipe, a video. You know, there's enough chefs talking about seafood and preparations that it's much easier nowadays for the consumer than it was historically.
It's good to hear you're saying that you actually are more okay with frozen seafood. That wasn't the case before. How much of the frozen seafood do you use in your restaurant groups?
Well, certainly shrimp. I mean, we do a lot of shrimp that, it really depends. Like some seafood, like I was talking about the flash freezing earlier, like probably 15 years, maybe only 15 years ago, I wouldn't have bought frozen tuna. I wouldn't do that. But now, with the freeze methods, it's definitely a different situation. You know, I think some seafood, I don't want to offend anybody, I don't know seafood companies I'll represent. Some seafood freezes well and some seafood doesn't, you know, and we really have to decipher what that is. For us, you know, shrimp doesn't suffer a lot when it's frozen. So I mean, that's off the top of my head. You know, king crab that doesn't really suffer to me, but I've only kind of had it frozen, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess well, you know, to wrap up, and I'll love to open up to the audience here and online. We're all trying to eat better, feel better, but also make it easier. And, you know, if you had a neighbor that came and said, "And how do I actually feed myself better, but I want it easy?" Give me, final words on how to make it easy.
Order from Chico.
Good answer.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it is start with an easier protein, you know, some, like a snapper, for example, it's not the easiest piece of fish to cook. Personally, I don't think it freezes very well, I think it has to be fresh. And then the freshness is an issue, like getting it from point A to point B. So again, depending on where you are and what opportunity you have to buy seafood. I mean, here locally, we use a company called Profish that we would buy a lot of our seafood from them. They have a market that they also sell retail to. So when people want to eat seafood at home, I kind of direct them there, that they can buy fresh seafood. But again, that's, getting the consumer to understand that, some things are fine frozen and.
Reminded me about the candied salmon, just buy a pack of that.
Just open that up and eat it. Like smoked salmon, it's good, it has great shelf life, the flavor's delicious, you can see today, like the dish we made. A lot of times we think smoked salmon and a bagel, and that's it, but smoked salmon has, really endless possibilities for different dishes and different recipes, and that's already kind of delicious on its own out of the package, and easy today we made a summer roll, it's very, pretty easy to make that, it's not a challenging recipe, when you have a little bit of technique, and smoked salmon goes perfect.
Well, I'll open up for just a few questions. Are there any questions online, Corey? Yep. There's your chance to.
No math questions, no trick questions.
Oh, Gretchen might have a math question for you.
Hi, so I want to eat seafood and I really like to keep it simple. So I often have frozen like halibut or cod or salmon. So I'll thaw it out, get it out midday, thaw it out, put a little marinade on it. And now I'm not sure if I should use the air fryer or the oven. The air fryers are all the rage.
Yeah.
But if it's a 1.5-inch stick, it seems I tend to overcook it in the air fryer.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the oven. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to talk about gadgets, and it's funny, like my family members are like, I don't know why they're always like, oh, we'll just give them something culinary, like, so I've had air fryers and slow cookers, and I just basically end up giving them to something else. So yeah, air fryers are all the rage, and I guess as we're thinking about healthier styles of cooking, that is definitely a way to do it, but to me, if you spend the money on a beautiful piece of halibut, I would put it in an air fryer, but I wouldn't put a chicken wing in an air fryer because I love chicken wings and I don't want to ruin them in an air fryer. But yeah, I would say an oven is better. I mean, to me, on a piece of halibut, I generally would defrost it, pat it dry, season it, pan sear it, and then finish it in the oven. Because I like a little bit of crust on top of that. To get a little bit of texture. And there's a flour called Wonder Flour, which with halibut, if you just kind of tap the top of that in the Wonder Flour, then sear it in the pan with a little bit of olive oil. So it gets nice and golden brown, then flip it in the pan and put it in the oven. That's the way that I always cook halibut. Yeah, 350. Yeah, so you make it with the.
That's number.
We can do like a seafood, what is that Batman thing? We'll put up the seafood, 911. Yeah, it's in a form of some sort of fish, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just 2 questions.
Yeah.
Oh, Elaine right there. Okay.
Hello, hi Scott.
Hi.
Thanks for the passion in your talk. You said something about, if you don't grow up getting used to eating seafood, it can be a difficult transition. But I think also seafood is that kind of food that if you get it wrong, you will never forget it. And you're not going back to it because it's terrible. So I was just wondering if you have a cheat sheet or like some tip for dealing with seafood that is about to go bad. Does such a thing
I mean,
exist?
I think you have to trust your nose, and really, if it's whole fish, it's a little bit easier, if it's a whole fish, you can see the eyes, and the eyes cloudy. is it slimy on the outside? How does it smell? Filleted seafood that's frozen can be a little more challenging, but it's still, the smell test to me is like if it's frozen crowback, you cut out a crowback and it's defrosted and it smells bad.
Food safety first,
Yeah,
right?
food safety is always paramount for sure, and you're right about that, because I think where I'm from, like, there are some bad examples of seafood and people would eat that, and my wife's mother, she used to just bake like haddock with a lemon, and probably wasn't the best quality haddock, and probably wasn't a very good cook method, and the first time you eat it, if it's not good, you're like, yeah, so that is tricky to get first time or new seafood consumers to have it prepared correctly, which, I think a restaurant is a good gateway for that, because we are producing a lot of seafood, we are going through a lot. But yeah, at home, it really has to be safe handling as well, which is important. And like other proteins, chicken, and like there is a certain amount of safety that needs to be brought into it, but I think it's just trust your gut, like. My wife will be like, smell this cream, is it bad? I'm like, I don't need to smell that, just throw it away. Don't need to suffer that, like, it's okay, just put it in the garbage, we'll go get a new one, so I think it's just trust your natural instinct, and I think we're well equipped to, use our senses to determine if seafood's good or bad.
Few questions here, one from Erica Feller.
Thanks. Thank you for that beautiful lunch. It was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the validation of my choice to just order takeout.
We appreciate that.
But I guess what I wonder is, like, in your experience with your customers, working with other chefs, is there one misconception about seafood that you would want to set straight?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about seafood, like I'm saying, if you've had a bad experience, or the cost is too high, like people associate seafood with like a lot of times a premium experience, which I think there is a lot of affordable seafood, and people don't always, they equate that like, oh, it's not very expensive, it's not very good, and I think that's, an issue. Like, my restaurant Chinko is a fast casual, but we have, we don't do a lot of seafood because some of it is price related, but we do salmon and we do shrimp, which are kind of gateway seafoods to me. And more consumers are familiar with salmon and shrimp, and I'm not sure what the numbers would bear, but people are very familiar with those two seafoods. So I think a lot of it is you can get really good quality seafood and not spend as much as you think you would. You don't have to buy a shellfish tower to get a great, salmon stir fry that we do at Chinko. How many times can I say Chinko? My brand name and the person in the background.
Joe had a question.
Great presentation, great punch. Great presentation, great lunch. I may have a tough question for you. May not necessarily answer, but I'd like you to think about. And from a psychiatric point of view, patients get discharged from hospitals. They don't know how to cook. We want to have them to help to eat, food with brain nutrients that's clearly fish. What ideas come to your head about cheap, readily understandable recipes that people with, recovering from psychiatric disorders might benefit and introduce themselves to seafood with?
I wish my wife was here. She's a psychologist. She could probably answer this better than I could, but I think you're all on the right path with some of the pre-seasoned, pre-marinated seafood. Like the salmon cake we made today, I think is a good example. Like it's a great seafood, and we're taking that and we're turning that into basically a crab cake, which is a little more recognizable. People know what a crab cake is, but we're using a different protein for that. So we're packaging that in a more consumer friendly package than it would be otherwise. And I think that goes a long way, that you can I don't want to go the route of sorry if there's any vegans here, but the vegan chicken nuggets and like things that like look like something else, but are something else and want to taste like something else. I wouldn't go that far, but there are some, seafood items that we could certainly, make more approachable, and I'd have to give it a little more thought, but the salmon cake today was one right off the top of the head that like, salmon's approachable, crab cakes are approachable, we can kind of do a same prep on that, and then it's not hard to make, it's easy, it's flavorful. I think the most important thing is really having some seafood that's fresh and making it flavorful. And there's a lot of culinary ways that we can impart flavor that, I mean, I hate to give up all the tricks because I won't have a job if everybody cooks what I do, but there's certainly a lot of techniques. There's certainly a lot of ways that we enhance flavor as chefs that can be, sold pre-distribution, like in the package, and when they get home, it's much easier for them to kind of wrap their brains around. I do like, even me, sometimes I'll buy like a pork loin that's already marinated. Because I like that flavor, I like the injection, and I like, there are certain dishes you only want to eat in a restaurant. If you go to a French restaurant, I always get cassoulet. Cassoulet is like a 27-step recipe. I don't think you should make that at home. But there are certain things like marinating, and even at home, sometimes we don't have the time to marinate like a piece of fish, a piece of meat for 24 hours, 48 hours. We're not thinking ahead. A lot of times we're like, what do we eat for dinner today? Like, and we're not always planning it out. And I think some of those prepackaged marinade goods are a really good way to get a consumer to eat something that's delicious and healthy and doesn't take a lot of work.
Thank you so much.
Well,
I
Thanks, everyone.
can't know how many people we have a video to cook along with you during October National Beauty
Yeah,
Month.
let's do it. Perfect.
Let's do it. And then Chef Scott will be doing another demo outside at 4 o'clock, so we can't wait to see what our choices are for this afternoon. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks, Jen.